Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I just want to say that I don't appreciate how this has been handled from the beginning. This was put on a consent agenda. We were given a half a page of backup. So all of this detail that's being referenced was actually not shared with the school committee, and it was put on a section of the agenda such that the assumption was that we were going to pass it without discussion. That's not only inappropriate, it's actually a violation of our policy because this is a naming rights proposal. And I know that everybody wants to get themselves wrapped up in the money. This is a naming rights proposal. This is a question of what name is going to be on a section of one of our high schools. Let me just note, by the way, that when a policy is brought before the school committee, it actually ought to be given to us in the backup. For my colleagues who don't have it off the top of their head, that's section FF. And section FF for the Worcester Public Schools includes the language, first of all, that there's supposed to be a process for any naming, as we're seeing elsewhere on our agenda. But secondly, names and wording associated with school facilities shall be consistent with school district policies and promote messages aligned with the mission, vision, and goals of the school district. So I want to note something that, with all due respect to our daily, which I'm sure everyone saw today, that the main point here tonight is that this facility, as a condition of receiving this grant, would have to be named for Mr. Haas. So let's not be under any illusions that this is something that someone's doing out of the generosity of their heart or something of that nature. Because the thing that happens when you name a facility after someone is that it makes press. And when you make press, you actually change the Google alert and you change what happens when you search for someone's name. So just to remind everyone about the sequence of events that has happened over the past 2 decades with Mr. Haas, the first thing that happened was a violation of a patent law that happened back in 2000. He was fined $8.9 million for stealing somebody else's idea. We have a word for that in education. We call that plagiarism, and we punish our students for it. And when we punish our students for it, we expect them to take their punishment and then move forward having learned something. Contrary to that, what happened, and let me just note that I'm not making allegations here, this was proven in federal court. What Mr. Haas did is not take his punishment of his $8.9 million. He got angry at the federal judge, and he decided that what he was going to do was conspire with multiple other people to commit $30 million in federal tax fraud. That's, just to be clear, by the way, $30 million, you can sort of read that in a headline and maybe you pass it by. Let me note that that's more than double our Title I allotment. And Title I is federal money that we get. So consider that what he essentially did was he stole the equivalent of 2 years of our Title I allotment. He then served 2 years in federal prison and he paid a $70 million fine. And let me just note that I don't really appreciate the spin that came out of the paper today about whether or not people are supposed to wear sackcloth and ashes for the rest of their life. Because when Mr. Haas got out, he then resumed his lifestyle because he is a very wealthy man. And unlike a lot of other people we know, who after they get out of prison, after committing other kinds of federal violations, he had a place to live and he had a job to walk back into. Now, the question is, was the lesson actually learned? Well, I don't know, Mr. Chair, because the PBS NewsHour in March of this year found that he was violating federal sanctions against Russia, because one of the things that you can do with advanced manufacturing is you can use it to actually create weapons. And we, of course, as the United States, are not actually providing Russia with systems for the creation of weapons at this time. Of course, as we know, because it seems that administration felt it was necessary for them to share this with us, the Haas Manufacturing denied that allegation. When PBS NewsHour went back and looked at it again in August, what did they find? That was no longer coming directly from the Haas Manufacturing, but it seems that they're still managing to find their way there through a company that was created in China 2 weeks after PBS NewsHour went to press. That seems to me to be a pretty clear coincidence. So here's the deal, Mr. Chair. As a school committee member, as an educator, as a parent, as a member of this community, I think really hard about the names that we put on our buildings, about the examples that we put in front of our kids. We have somebody who committed what what we would call plagiarism in schools, who rather than taking their punishment actually defrauded the federal government for millions and millions of dollars, and who appears to now be actually violating more federal laws as we actually speak. And what people want to do, what the proposal is tonight, is to put this man's name on our building for 15 years. I consider having a name on a building to be an honor. And I say that as someone whose name is on plaques in a couple of our buildings that are new. You have to earn that honor. You don't get to buy that honor. It would be a violation of our policy to move forward this evening, Mr. Chair, because it does not actually meet the terms of FF. Let me note that if the school committee wishes to move forward, that will take a 2/3 vote, because it takes a 2/3 vote to suspend a policy. Well, Mr. Chair, I'm genuinely offended that a condition of this donation is to put this man's name on the building. And frankly, every educator also likewise ought to be offended that this is an example that anyone wants to put in front of our children. Mr. Chair, I hope that our honor cannot be bought, and I'm making a motion to file.